So then we move on to Stave 4, the last of the spirits, and the phantoms coming across slowly, gravely and silently, so it's quite tense and quite dramatic, etc. And because this is a representation of kind of everything Scrooge has done, catching up with him as well, and he's about to see the culmination of it. Scrooge is so shocked by this, he is bent down upon his knee, so you can say he's kind of so terrified he kind of trembles to the ground and he's upon his knee. And some people could actually argue there was some kind of genuflection before something mightier than oneself. And so again, there's a religious tradition. I mean, you can look into that if you want to. In the very air through which the spirit moved, it seemed to scatter gloom and mystery. I mean, it's interesting that it's got the word scatter, because it seems like it does it inadvertently. It's not kind of purposely laid out, and that's obviously because what it does because of people's actions in the past. It's just showing them what will come. And the idea of mystery here, obviously, because these futures, although they might seem quite bleak, aren't necessarily set. And it's good to analyze that. So we've got the kind of classic idea. Obviously, we already know it's hooded and it's in deep. Its garment is deep black and it's concealed, and you can't see anything of it apart from this hand that it's got. So again, it's this mysterious creature, and again, it'll be quite scary. And then Scrooge obviously knows exactly who it is. The spirit doesn't speak, so obviously that kind of adds to the drama and the tension. And then Scrooge kind of starts to go along with everything that obviously the Scrooge wants. Sorry, the ghost wants him to do. The spirit pauses, allowing him to actually kind of stand and follow, because that's how scared or intimidating this creature actually is, or this spectre is. Scrooge can barely actually find his feet in seeing it. So again, when we're talking about the change and how much Scrooge changes, talking about the physical aspects of how affected he is going to be really important. Moving on, then we go to Scrooge. Obviously, he's trying to not curry some favour with the ghost to say, but try and get the ghost to actually speak to him, so he's kind of has the softness or the understanding that he have with the other ghosts. But then Scrooge realises that this is serious now, so there is no time for talking, and he knows the night is waning, and he just says lead on. And the amount of time he says lead on now, Scrooge is actually also, it's really interesting, he says that he's in a position ready to follow now, whereas previously he was kind of the centre of what was going on, and at least in his world, no longer. So they move through, and we see some people that Scrooge knows, and Scrooge is, and all this kind of element, Scrooge is looking for himself. And you see kind of the people that Scrooge has hung around with before. Now the descriptions of them aren't very nice. So here we've got one, this great fat man with a monstrous chin. Obviously, this person represents kind of greed. Here this person's actually taking a vast quantity of snuff out of a large snuff box, which I'm presuming for this is just kind of, we're talking it's tobacco, but again, it's kind of like a dirtiness and excess, etc., etc., etc. And here we've got this red-faced gentleman with this really weird thing on his nose, making it look animalistic in a way. And again, there's a kind of a greed in that. And they're talking about this person that's died, and this person that's died, obviously we don't know at this moment who it is. And so obviously Scrooge doesn't know, but these are kind of his friends, and they're talking about him, and Scrooge they're talking about him because it is him that is passed here. But the way they're talking about it is just with complete disregard. They just do not care, and it's quite they even make a joke about he hasn't left his money to me, and they're all they laugh at that kind of thing. It's just, there's no care for the actual person that's passed away at all. And then one person even goes as far as to say the only time he will be going, first of all, they say they know it'll be a cheap funeral, and they said that nobody's going to want to go to it. So imagine looking at your legacy there in front of you, and just seeing that the people that you thought were your acquaintances, or people that you held in high esteem to a point, they just don't care at all. So that must be quite heartbreaking. And again, they're making fun of him as they go through and as they discuss with each other. And then as again they're going, Scrooge is listening, and he's looking around to kind of see who it is. But here, this spirit doesn't kind of offer explanations, doesn't say anything. Probably one of the reasons for that is again just for the drama, so it kind of built to us. Now this part is a bit too neat for some people's liking, but it's obviously, I don't know anyone who didn't kind of get, even I think a class of 9-year-olds would get that the person being talked about here was Scrooge, and the only person who seems oblivious to it is Scrooge himself. But maybe he's not. Maybe in some ways he's just trying to kind of push it back as far as he can, and obviously there's a level here he can't. So and then there's some other friends where he's talking about them, and these are people he actually he tried to look good in front of, and they just talk about him again like very dismissively, and they just say, oh, he's dead, and they just get on with their day. They don't really care at all. So again, it's really quite hard hitting, and it's kind of making a point that you shouldn't really care about your position with people, and obviously the other side of that is that you should care about your position with God, and that's kind of the unsaid lesson there, because obviously the people here pay no attention and do nothing for you, whereas it would be different if it was a spiritual relationship of some kind with God. And then so Scrooge is kind of looking about, and obviously he's kind of worried and not sure, and he's trying to work out what kind of lesson he has to take from this. And that's a huge change for him in and of itself, because now he wants to learn, he wants to kind of improve, he wants to see how things are going to change and how they're going to be. So he looked around the play, he looked around for himself, he looked around, and so wherever he's going, he looks for himself, but he never actually managed to see himself, and that was outside his old workplace. And then in another place where he goes to now, he goes to a very obscure part of the town, an obscure part of town basically where he doesn't go because it's way beneath him, way below him, and he just knows it's a place of bad repute. And there's kind of like these are all the kind of neglected people, and he's kind of talking about them here, not just in case it's setting us up for what they're going to do, but just talking about all the people who can be helped and actually can be assisted. And it's a reminder of the poverty and the need that many people have. And so we get to this one place, and there's just this is quite a long scene, just where basically the important part is that some people have come in with some items and they want to pawn them and sell them, and this guy says he'll buy them. And they're talking about this guy saying, death was good for him and he was stingy, etc., etc. Same thing we were hearing about the guy said before. And then they actually start bringing out some of his stuff, and we see that this person, it's not necessarily that they're selling his stuff in and of itself that's shocking, but the way they went and got about the stuff. So they stole the stuff from his room while he was laying on his deathbed, and no one was there, no one cared to be there to stop it. So they were actually able to do that. And again, that kind of shows how unpopular Scrooge is. And I remember he's watching this, so it would hit him again quite hard. So they stole the bed curtains from around his bed where his body lay, and they stole kind of all the stuff from his suits, etc. And then the last, and they're just talking about it, not in kind of like, oh, it's a shame we have to do this, etc., etc. They're just, they're just kind of saying, well, I hope he didn't die of anything. I wouldn't want to catch anything from him, etc., etc. And it's all just kind of light-hearted. They're like, again, they just really do not care. And as it kind of builds on, Scrooge feels really sorry for this person. He's like, Scrooge, I see. Scrooge, I see. Sorry, actually, there's one point I've missed there. It's quite, just to kind of show the depth of how he isn't cared for. Someone's actually taken his shirt off his taking his shirt without his off his body. So basically, she took him down from the rings, and then someone else has actually taken his shirt off his dead body, while he's lying there. So that's somebody was fool enough to do it, but I took it off again, to put the shirt on the body, and she's taken it off. So that's no one actually cares about this, but even to give him this kind of. No one cares about Scrooge enough to even give him his decency and, a respectful burial, etc. Even the clothes they were supposed to be buried in have been taken from him. And then, as it's going across, Scrooge is then shown this room, and here Scrooge says, what's the case of this unhappy man? I see. I think I understand what I'm supposed to learn. How this unhappy man's life might be my own. My own life is probably a bit like this now. But what is this? Where are you taking me? And he just takes him to a room where he sees the body there, and Scrooge doesn't actually have the strength to lift back the curtain. Lift back the blanket that would be covering, or the sheet, sorry, that would be covering the face. And he begs to leave. This is a fearful place. In leaving it, I shall not leave its lesson, but please let's go. And the ghost doesn't let him. He goes, I understand you, Scrooge returned, and I would do it if I could, but I have not the power. power spirit. So this is kind of his limit, and that's really interesting, because a lot of people only change when you really take them to the place of no return, you know, when they reach their limits, etc. And that's when, you know, you've taken all you can and you can't take no more. Cliche kind of maybe can be applied here, and that's it's a really kind of powerful scene, not in so much that he's shocked or terrified, but here he just says, I do not have the power to do it. So he realizes that, you know, he needs the spirit, and again in that God and all that comes with it, to be gentle on him here, because he can't actually do what he is commanded to do.